Hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and today we're back in the shop, and we're going to be making paper cartridges with a system that's new to me. It's been out for a while, but I have had a heck of a time acquiring it. And it's the Crossen paper cartridge system. And it has a unique aspect to it that I've been wanting to try. And Lord knows I've got enough paper cartridge systems, but this one really intrigued me. So I ordered their 36 and their 44 caliber kits, and I'm going to make 44 paper cartridges today using the Errors Gone Kerr bullet mold. So here's the 44 caliber kit, and here's what you get from Mr. Crossen. And this all appears to me, I'm no expert, to be 3D printed. So you get a mandrel. You get a former for the envelope, you get a little funnel, and you get a powder scoop, powder measure. I've measured this, it throws 22 grains, at least mine does, of 3F Swiss powder. So, I mean, this is not remarkably different from other paper cartridge systems. What's different are the envelopes. And John Crossen sends you some envelopes with the kit, and I bought a number of extras. And the envelopes are interesting because they are one piece, so you don't need to make separate bottoms and glue them on separately. And that's really the strong point of this system. And it works very easily. I'm just going to move these out of the way. I'm going to take one of the envelopes. I'm going to use a glue stick. And I'm going to put glue down on one edge and around the little trapdoor flap there. Okay, having done that, we're just going to take the mandrel. There's a line on it. I'm going to wrap the paper envelope at that line. Right now we've got that trapdoor. I'll fold it over, put it in the former, and what John provides you are coffee filters that are nitrated. So for a perfect fit, that's what you want to use. And you get a perfectly made cartridge shell in one easy step, right? We'll just do it again with one more. Like I said, this is simple. It's not really that much different from other systems, but the one piece envelope to make the shell is what's a bit different. So once again, using the nitrated coffee filter paper that Crossen provides, I'll wrap it right up to the line. Right, roll it tight. Gonna pull that through a little bit. Probably being more fussy with this than I have to, but I did have a couple that I made that did not cover. That left a little gap down at the bottom. You don't want that. So you want to make sure you get that flap over right, and they come right off. Now, I have waxed the mandrel, and I'll show you how I do that because you probably ought to know. Give me one sec. Okay, I use a block version of a microcrystalline wax like Renaissance wax. And all I do is I just rub the mandrel on it. Pretty simple, pretty easy. I used to have a cook on local TV when I lived in Philadelphia, Chef Tell. Move that in there. Get everything good and waxed up. Put that aside. Now I'm just going to let this dry for just a minute or two. Okay, so it hardens pretty quickly. What I'm going to do now is just buff it out so it is not sticky. We get all that excess wax off of there, and I'm going to buff it good. I'm buffing it with linen, by the way. I like linen for this because of the texture. Now, if you got denim, denim will work good too. All right, and the reason we do that is so it'll come off of the so the envelopes will come off of the mandrel without sticking to it. So I'll just make one more. Show you how that goes. All right, once again, glue up the sides. Glue the trap door. Wrap it on the mandrel. And in we go. And the wax helps that to come off very easily. So, that's pretty simple. Now, I will say, you're probably not going to want to buy cut papers from John Crossen all the time. I mean, maybe you are, but most of us are not. So what I did is I took some credit card stock and I traced one of his envelope papers and I just made a template. And I like to use hair curler papers, right, which are these True Waves. I like them. They're more flimsy than the coffee filters for sure, but they cost literally next to nothing. I think that 1,000 packet might have cost me $2. And you can get like 2 to 3 easily off of a sheet. So once again, we glue it up. Now, as I said, these are not as robust as the coffee filters. And John nitrates his coffee filters. I've used coffee filters both nitrated and unnitrated. And I have to say, I don't really have a problem with the unnitrated ones. But, so if you want to use coffee filters, feel free, or use cigarette papers or this paper. Now, the problem with not using coffee filters is, of course, this unit is size formed, so it's going to be a little loose. However, you can still make a fine cartridge just using cigarette papers or, hair curl papers or whatever you happen to like to use. So I'm going to make up a bunch of those and then we'll take it to the step of actually assembling cartridges. Okay, I've made up a few envelopes, so I've got enough for us to go to the next phase, which is actually assembling a completed cartridge. And I'm going to show you how the Crossen folks, or Mr. Crossen, John Crossen, says to do it. And I'm going to show you just a little change that I've made. So, get this where you can see it. I put the funnel in. So I've got his measure, which I have weighed out at 22 grains. Which is, a good charge for a .44 caliber cartridge. So I'm just going to dump that in. All right, now I'm going to tap this to settle it because I got to get as much room in here as I can. Okay, now John Crossen says to use a naphtha-based cement, or that's what he recommends for putting the bullet heads on. So I'm going to do that. I typically use Elmer's Glue All, but they both work. They both work just fine. So I'm going to go with his recommendation. I'm just going to paint the lower band here and the heel with a good coat of glue. Okay, now I'm going to put that in. Tightly as I can. I'm going to kind of pinch it with my fingers. Let that adhere. Okay, so I think you can see we've got a pretty good cartridge there. The grease band is exposed. I've had some trouble getting these to stick, but you know, it does it okay. So that's his powder charge recommendation. I'm going to show you what I've been doing, just because that grip on the bullet is pretty tenuous with that little band. So I've reduced the powder charge to 21 grains, which is not really going to be noticeable when you fire it. So I use this measure. Pop our funnel back in. Settle that down a bit. The naphtha stuff, the modeling cement, dries really quickly, which is good and bad. I mean, it's good in execution, it's just bad in getting it on. Okay, now I'm going to set this in. All right, so as I think you can see, I get right up to that top band, and I like it because it gives a more secure grip on the cartridge envelope. So that is the way I'm going to make them. So that's how you assemble it. I'm just going to knock a bunch off, and really that is all there is to it, besides when they're all made. I'll take them upstairs, heat up some lube, and dip them in melted lube, and they'll be all done. But that's it. Crossen cartridge system. I find it to be very fast and easy to use. I actually like it quite a bit. It makes a good cartridge. Nice, solid, well-formed, sharp edges. I mean, everything you could ask for in a combustible paper cartridge. It was all right there. Okay, I've made 30 of these things so far. Before I go any farther, because this is a new system for me, I like to test a cartridge and make sure everything fits. So I'm going to grab a cartridge, I'm going to slide it in. I'd say everything is going to be good. And let's ram it home. And okay, we're below the chamber mouth. Everything goes in great. I would say that we are good to go. Okay, well, I finished loading 75 cartridges. I had a few in here and some in here, using the Crossen system. And I just want to give you, I think, my final observations on this. First of all, this has become my new go-to. Pardon me. I have just about every cartridge former system that there is, like Cap and Balls and Cliff Manley's and Guns of the West, and they're all good. They're all very good. I like this one better. Now, it's not really revolutionary in terms of what it does. You know, its design. It's a mandrel and a former, and that's pretty normal. That seem to be 3D printed. So why do I like it? Well, I think the main thing is the shape of the envelope, this one-piece envelope. Using this one-piece envelope is much faster and much more positive than using the two-piece of making the tube and then making an end cap and gluing them on. And it just pretty much you do one operation, so you can really knock the shells out very quickly using this system. Really like that. Most of the formers have stubby little handles, most of the mandrels. I like this tubular handle on here. It's very easy to work with, very nice. So I like that, and I just like the way the system works. There's no cutting the paper off. There's no dicking around. It's not fiddly at all. Things go together very well. They go together immediately, and you knock out your cartridge shells very quickly. So I really like it. It makes an excellent cartridge. You can see square, slightly tapered, very rugged, and very tightly packed. Exactly what you want in a paper cartridge. So I'm a fan. I really am. They give you a funnel. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to be quite honest. I still use this funnel, which you can get from most muzzleloading shops. I just find that it does a great job. But if you don't have one, they give you a funnel, and this works very well. You know, it's a little small for my purposes, but it works. The powder measure works, I think. Now it throws the amount it's designed to throw, right? I don't know if I could find one in here, but maybe I can. Okay, so it's designed to make a cartridge that wraps around that little stubby band of the Kerr bullet. I don't like that. And if you use that Johnson & Dow bullet, that has a very generous heel. This is going to throw too much powder in that amount of paper. That's just the way it goes. Now, what I've done is I use an adjustable powder measure, and I set it for like 1 grain less than this. And that gave me enough to get just about all the way up the heel, which is perfect. So you got a lot more that the cartridge paper has to grab onto on the bullet, right? And I like that. Now, all you got to do, especially because the handle's down at the bottom, is just take a file or some sandpaper and just sand that down until it's throwing the amount of powder that you want, if you want to throw a little bit less. So this is still excellent. The fact that I didn't bother using it, well, just because I have an adjustable measure that works just as well. But I really like the system. Now, I will say this. If you're going to use it, you really ought to work with coffee filters. It's really sized for coffee filters. I made a number of cartridges using my curling papers, and they just don't fit it that well. They're too thin, there's too much slop, so you don't get the benefit of the mandrel and the former really scrunching things together and gluing them up. And it also makes it harder to seat the bullet because you're not all the way out to the edges of the case with the paper to be able to pack it tight. It just, in fact, I ripped a couple packing them tight. So better off using coffee filters. Not that that's a problem. And the coffee filters are better nitrated, but they don't have to be. They'll burn up if you don't nitrate them, but they'll burn better if you do. And that's not that difficult. I'll probably do a video on nitrating coffee filters in the future. So, just the bottom line is I intend to keep using this. I like it a lot. I wish I'd gotten one years ago. John Crossen does not tend to make a lot of these at a time. I mean, he's not like a big company. He's just a regular guy who does this on the side. And if he runs out, it might be a while before he gets around to making some more. So, I would say if you see them, buy them. All right, so now that we've talked about making the cartridges, and you can see I've made up a bunch of them, you might wonder, how are you going to store these things? And, there are a number of options. I have to say, I like the historical packaging. And a lot of people who are really into making paper cartridges love to make the historical packaging for them as well. And I always try to have a few around, if for nothing else than display purposes. But, if you want to make up enough cartridges to have a really good shooting session, say 50 or maybe even 100, making those individual 6-shot cartridge packs for 50 or 100 cartridges is resource intensive and kind of a pain in the butt. So I like to have them around, but I find it more convenient to have bulk storage for the cartridges because I like to make up a good number of them at once. So the historical cartridge packages you can get from Crossen, you can get from Cap and Ball, and you can make your own. And a few of those goes a long way. But what I've done is I've taken cartridge boxes that were sold for display purposes as historical cartridge boxes for regular brass shelled cartridges, regular centerfire cartridges. And I've repurposed them. And basically I've taken labels for the combustible paper cartridge packaging, and I've just glued them to those boxes so that I know what I've got. And I can store about 50 44 caliber cartridges in one of those boxes and about 70 36 caliber cartridges. So I can put 100 or a couple 100 cartridges away using those boxes, and I can carry my individual, 6 cartridge envelopes to the range or with my kit, especially if there's any reenacting involved or, there are going to be people for a living history, something like that. But when I want to do a good bit of shooting, I can also just pull a box or two of these off the shelf and head for the range and have all the ammo that I want to shoot. So it's just, my little hint to you of things that you can do. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. And I will see you next time. Until then, bye.